Remoaner! What's going on, guys? Welcome to the video. So it seems Iain Duncan Smith has come out in the Telegraph and decided to start savaging these Tory Remoaners. In this article he pulls absolutely no punches when it comes to Dominic Grieve, Philip Hammond and the rest of the Remoaners in Parliament. The article headlines, "Panicking Tory Remainers are determined to sabotage any Brexit deal." Not long ago, rebel Remainers in the Tory party swore faithfully that they voted for the Ben Surrender Act because they wanted to ensure Boris Johnson got a deal. I can recall vividly in the House of Commons how they all nodded sagely when Oliver Letwin stated that this was their only goal. Yet within just a few weeks, many of those nodding heads now seem to be shaking heads. Philip Hammond, Dominic Grieve and their cohorts, panicking at the possibility that Boris Johnson may actually now get a deal, have seemingly started hatching a plot to force the UK to stay in the EU beyond the October 31st deadline. Well, guess what? I'm not surprised by this in the slightest, and neither should you, IDS. Let's be honest, guys, we all knew they were going to do it. As soon as it gets close to D-Day, they're all going to start crapping themselves, coming out of the woodwork with this, that, court cases, who knows, motions in Parliament. You wait for Saturday. I'll expect we'll see them then. We shouldn't be surprised. After all, so many of these complaints have formed when it comes to changing their positions on the issue of Brexit. Well, yeah, half of Parliament. After Britain voted to leave, they vowed to uphold the result and decried a second referendum. Grieve himself said in 2016 that if you invoke Article 50, it's a one-way street to the exit, with no agreement if necessary, as you will see here.
And what was not debated in 2016 was the likelihood that we would end up leaving the EU with no deal.
And at the end of that 2 years, there is no guarantee that agreement will have been reached, but our exit would be automatic.
The electorate will have spoken. We will have to invoke Article 50. Once you invoke Article 50, it is a one-way street to the exit, which will happen in 2 years with no agreement of any kind at all, if necessary. And what was not debated in 2016 was the likelihood that we would end up leaving the EU with no deal.
Yet now it seems these and other pledges are to be trashed. As well as abandoning democratic commitments, many have taken to casually abandon their previous political views. Obviously there is taking a swipe at the Tory party MPs who have defected to the illiberal Femocrats. Casually abandon their political views? Yeah, they've gone to the Lib Dems, so I'd say they casually abandon it. Take for example the issue of free trade, a cornerstone of conservative policy. Poverty around the world has been dramatically reduced as a result of open markets and freer and fairer competition. Yet, astonishingly, only last week, Philip Hammond took aim at the idea that Brexit Britain would be able to increase its GDP significantly by doing trade deals around the world. Needless to say, he drew on the very flawed Treasury forecast produced while he was Chancellor. This is the one which ignored international evidence to the contrary and used very negative assumptions on migration, and even more brazenly referred to unspecified implementation difficulties. Unsurprisingly, the research concluded that the positive effects of any non-EU trade deal struck after agreeing a Brexit deal with Brussels would be minimal. Such a ridiculous assessment flies in the face of basic global economic history, not least the repeal of the UK's Corn Laws in 1846, a move which led to decades of growth, Singapore's post-war GDP per capita growth to 155% of that of our own country today, and the fact that liberal trade deals over 30 years have boosted Australian GDP by a remarkable 5.4%. Mr. Hammond's position also flagrantly contradicts a range of successful independent forecasters that show the boost to the UK economy would be between 2 and 4%. Because of course Project Fear is all Philip Hammond knows, let's be honest. He doesn't care about anything, he just wants to eat the yellow snow and feed it to you. Proper shitweasel style. The former Chancellor's puzzling attitude to free trade lends a worrying insight into the political psyche of so many avid Remoaners. One wonders whether over time they have become so corroded by their anger at Brexit that they are determined to see no benefit whatsoever in striking a deal of any kind. Even some of his fellow Conservative rebels are concerned by this extremism. One who rebelled on the Surrender Act but who, like many rebels, want to support a deal, has described the former Chancellor as totally paranoid. I'd describe him as a total wanker. Then there is Mr. Grieve. Remember how he has twice in the last few months forced through very significant legislation in constitutional smash and grabs, allowing MPs less than 1 day to examine the details. Now the PM hopes to bring a deal before us and get the bill through quickly. His attitude has changed. Mr. Grieve claims it would be wrong to force through such an important constitutional legislation in 7 days. He declared it improper, unaware of the irony. Brexiteers need to brace themselves. Mr. Hammond and Mr. Grieve appear to form part of a die-hard Tory rebel clique. It may be plotting to give Speaker John Bercow the power to send an extension letter to Brussels, which is why, as I said in my video yesterday, people are putting complaints in about him, namely Rebecca Butler, or even appoint him PM in a constitutional coup by voting down the Queen's speech, which is very possible, guys. But it would be political suicide, the outrage that would stem from it. I'm sure there would be mass protests if John Bercow is put in as Prime Minister, I will tell you that much. The hardcore Remainers simply want to stop Brexit and defy the will of the people by any device, whether that be by revoking the referendum result, having a second referendum, or taking over government. Evidently, this group, allied with such saboteurs as Lib Dems, Scot Nationals, and astonishingly the Corbynated Chicken, are determined to break Brexit whatever the cost. But their days of subterfuge are over, and at last their anti-democratic agenda is now exposed to the British public. And that's the end of the article there. Well, you can see that Iain Duncan Smith is having absolutely none of it and coming straight out against Dominic Grieve, Philip Hammond and Oliver Letwin, I suppose. He does mention him in there. But technically he's taken a dig at every single one of these Remoaners who forced through the Surrender Act, and especially the Tory rebels. And rightly so. But Iain Duncan Smith, saying their days of subterfuge are over and at last the anti-democratic agenda is now exposed to the British public is wrong, mate. We know this already. We know exactly what they're doing. Even many Remain voters know exactly what they're doing. I see them in my live streams and in the comments section of my videos all of the time. Most people support democracy, and they see what these MPs like Lib Dems and the SNP are all up to, along with John Bercow. But a lot of us are very worried about the deal that Boris Johnson may get, so there is that to take into consideration. At the end of the day, the way I see it, any deal that he can come back with can only be a rehash of the Maybot deal, which is not good, and we don't want that. Well guys, I'm going to end the video there. It was just a short one to bring you this article. I want to thank the channel's PayPal, Patreon and Subscribe Star members for supporting the channel, along with everyone who watches my videos. Let me know what you guys think down in the comment section below. Leave a like, subscribe with the notification bell and share this video as it helps the channel a lot. And I will see you all in the next one.
Parliament is a dead parliament. It should no longer sit. It has no moral right to sit on these green benches. They don't like the truth. Twice they have been asked to let the electorate decide upon whether they should continue to sit in their seats, while they block 17.4 million people's votes. Parliament is a disgrace, but they're too cowardly to give it a go. But the time is coming. The time is coming, Mr. Speaker, when even these turkeys won't be able to prevent Christmas.
And it doesn't matter which language you use, we are going and we are glad to be going. We're off.